Welcome everyone, I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and now that all of the film has been watched and all of the grades are in, it's time for the FBGP Scouting NFL Draft Prospect Preview presented by Crossover. Before we get started with our rankings, here's how we gather our grades and what they actually mean. First, we watch a minimum of 3 full games on a prospect, his best game, his worst game, and the best possible matchup. And second, we grade on 15 key points specific to the position to equal 100 points in total. Now here's what the grades you'll see by a prospect name will actually mean. Prospects that have earned grades in the 90s graded out as potential future NFL All-Pros. Prospects in the 80s are considered future Pro Bowl players. Grades in the 70s represent solid NFL starters, and grades in the 60s are players that we believe are spot starters or situational starters in the NFL. And if you notice, we don't use the word reserve or backup because we personally feel as though there's no such thing as backups in the NFL, only starters in waiting. So without further ado, let's kick off our rankings by taking a look at our top 10. Reuben Foster out of Alabama graded out as our #1 inside linebacker prospect in this year's draft class. Foster is an explosive tackler and also one of the better linebackers to come out in the draft in a decade, in my opinion. He's ideally what you want in a middle linebacker, an enforcing leader that sets the tone defensively, and while in coverage he still shows some uncertainty. He has very good acceleration and recovery speed to affect the play. In man coverage or even zone dogs, I think he's great in that respect. I also believe he's a great A-gap and B-gap blitzer and provides some value there. I think he'll star from day one. Folarin Orimolade of Dartmouth checks in at #2 in our rankings. He's an impactful tackler that's really good in the open field as well. He doesn't miss many tackles, and his experience as an outside linebacker has him well versed in applying pressure on the quarterback both inside and out. The same experience has him very proficient in shedding blocks. Orimolade uses his hands extremely well in this regard. He reminds me a lot of Redskins linebacker Stephen Daniels. He also shed some weight this season and has gained much more explosiveness as a result. Good versatility, having played on the outside before, and in my opinion, he's the quintessential inside linebacker that can play in either a 4-3 or a 3-4. Hassan Reddick played multiple positions at Temple, including offense. The athleticism is obviously there, and that versatility yields itself at linebacker, where he seems step for step mentally and physically with what the offense is trying to do or thinking. Some project him as an outside linebacker, but I feel as though with his ability to blitz and be protected by a defensive line, it better suits him on the inside as a weak side inside linebacker in a 3-4 with situational use on the outside. I believe his game is very similar to Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker Ryan Shazier. Looking at linebackers 4 through 10, Jarrad Davis of Florida is an impact player, and what stopped him from being an elite player, quote unquote, is the injuries that he suffered at Florida. But he does everything at the position of a day one starter, which I think he will be in the NFL. Markel Lee of Wake Forest is a vastly underrated backer in this year's draft class. He has terrific and transferable skills, like his versatility to play inside or outside and also in nickel. He has very good blitzing skills as well, which will make him very tough to take off the field. Kendall Beckwood at 6'2", 252 is a classic old school Mike backer in the spread era. He has the football IQ to make the right play and put himself in position to make the right play despite marginal speed and acceleration. Jordan Herdman of Simon Fraser was a standout at the Senior Bowl. His game is very similar to Chris Borland, and where they differ is that Herdman isn't as stout at the point of attack like Borland was. He does a good job of getting around blocks without losing gap integrity. He's solid in coverage and does a really good job and has a really good feel for the position. Size is not a skill, so don't discredit the 6', 236-pound linebacker Hardy Nickerson Jr. of Illinois. He has the speed and instincts to beat the offensive lineman to the spot and make the play. He's also coming off a strong week of work at the East-West Shrine game. Austin Calitro of Villanova has played defensive end at one point in his career for the Wildcats, which explains his ability to be able to apply pressure. I think he's a two-down player and a situational blitzer. There is something to be said for a linebacker that takes great angles to the football and is also able to consistently make plays in space. In the short game, goal line, red zone, I think he is able to excel in pass coverage. What also is a benefit of playing defensive line is that Calitro has no issues in taking on blocks and making plays at the line of scrimmage. He got better every day in man-to-man coverage at the East-West Shrine game. Raekwon McMillan of Ohio State was a highly productive player for the Buckeyes. He was a team captain and defensive leader. Football IQ is off the charts. McMillan is very assertive in his reads, tackling, and also coverage. A lot of what he did well at Ohio State was to facilitate to the outside linebackers, but when he was asked to attack, he did just that, which is why his sophomore tape looks different than his junior tape. McMillan is a solid two-down backer that'll instantly boost a team's run defense efforts. Moving on to backers 11 through 20, both Connor Harris of Lindenwood and Andrew King of Army are coming off highly productive careers and great showings at All-Star games. Harris was a Senior Bowl standout, while King stood out a week prior at the East-West Shrine game. Tyler Condit of New Haven and Chad Jeter of Gardner-Webb are two small college underrated players to keep an eye on. Condit may even become a fullback at the next level, but he was a tackling machine for the Chargers. Chris Mulamba-Shimanga out of Maine is a top-rated CFL draft prospect in addition to being an NFL draft prospect, and what's impressive about his game is that he has that sideline-to-sideline speed and pursuit skills to eliminate angles in a running game. He has a great first step that aids in him being an effective blitzer and a good player dropping back in zone coverage. If he goes to the CFL, he may even become a rush defensive end. As an NFL prospect, I think he's a weak side linebacker or an inside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. I'm a big fan of his game and his potential. Christian Tago of San Jose State dealt with injuries this season and missed the first 3 games of the year, but still was able to finish second on the team in tackles. Now, he's your classic two-down run defender that isn't afraid to take on blocks and is a sure tackler. He doesn't have the quicks to handle man-to-man coverage, but does show above-average instincts in zone coverage to not be a liability. I think he'll thrive on special teams initially before making his way onto the regular defense. Rounding out our inside linebacker rankings with backers 21 through 27, and Matt Galambos out of Pitt and Marcus Oliver out of Indiana are solid, productive players, and I'm surprised Galambos didn't even get an All-Star game invite. Chase Allen out of Southern Illinois was a super productive player for the Salukis, having played both outside and inside backer. Najee Harris of Wagner is capable of playing both backer spots as well, and has built on a great career at Wagner with 2 solid performances at the NFL Regional Combine in DC and also Temple's Pro Day. Willie Duncan is another productive player and talented defensive prospect coming out of the SWAC this season. He was a 3-time All-Conference performer and 2-time Football Gameplan FCS All-American. Duncan is extremely stout at the point of attack and shows very good blitzing ability. I think his ability in coverage is being underrated. He's shown to be effective in that regard. And as a 2-down backer with the ability to blitz, defend the run, and take proper run fits on a consistent basis, Duncan definitely has a role at the next level. So that's a wrap for our 2017 FBGP Scouting Draft Prospect Preview presented by Crossover. To see more of our individual scouting reports, follow us on Twitter at FBGP Scouting and bookmark the page, footballgameplan.com/FBGP Scouting. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan, where you can get all of our scouting videos, mock drafts, pro day videos, and interviews with NFL draft prospects. And one more thing, subscribe to us on iTunes under Football Game Plan Podcast.